I see the born of no return. Sister, hey now, can't you see we're rushing for the end? I see the point of no return. Now I see the point of no return. It's just ahead.
Well, good evening. It's Monday, January 27th, 2014. Yeah, January's almost gone already. Seems like only yesterday it was 2001, the day the earth stood still. But I'm glad you've decided to spend your Monday evening listening to Wide Awake News. I am Gary Hendershot, and for the next hour, I'm going to be barking at the moon as if anybody out there was really listening. How cold is it where you are? I can tell you that there, polar vortex or whatever they're calling it this week has definitely had a little bit of an impact here on the East Coast, but fear not. Some stalwart individuals have braved the cold to try to get their message in front of the American people. Now, I cut my teeth back in the late 60s, early 70s, back when protests were common. I was one of those long-haired, hippie, freaky people that was out there hollering, "Hell no, I won't go." And the response that these folks got to their protest is much the same as what the early protests against the war in Vietnam received. 46 seconds of airtime on the evening news. Hundreds of thousands of people braved the weather here in D.C. to try to get their message out there that they find abortion to be abhorrent. Now, whether you agree with their position on this issue or not, they have a right to be heard. Their message has a right to be considered. They have a right to enter the competition for ideas. There was a day when in the United States, one of our primary mottos was, "Hey, I may not agree with your argument, but I would fight and perhaps even die to support your right to speak it." That seems to be missing nowadays. Our media here in the United States is controlled by a handful of corporate entities that can basically decide what arguments will and will not be put in front of the American people. If you have a issue that's important to you and you organize with like-minded people, take to the streets with your signs, have your march, and peacefully expect redress of your grievances from your government, you have that right. The Constitution and the framers assumed that an independent media would see these activities and be honor-bound and in their own self-interest trying to sell newspapers or whatever, would report on these ideas, be they popular or not. And in the early days, that was pretty much true. A lot of major cities would have 2 or 3 major newspapers, and you'd have one newspaper that had the liberal progressive slant. You'd have the other newspaper that had the conservative, let's keep everything the way it is stance. And they would be vying for audience, and there would be a competition of ideas. And yeah, if something like this anti-abortion march, which apparently attracted hundreds of thousands of people, if something like that happened, you'd have the left wing giving their slant on it, you'd have the right wing giving their slant on it, and you would be offered the opportunity to make up your own damn mind. That's the way it was supposed to work. Nowadays, most major cities have one newspaper, if they're lucky. They might have 2 or 3 in some major cities. You take New York, for example. They have a handful. But strangely enough, the arguments put forward seem to all be the same. And there doesn't really seem to be that headlong competition in media to get the news and present it to you. Nowadays, it seems the media has become a propaganda arm of government. And about the only arguments you hear are the arguments supported by those currently in power. To all those who suffered the weather and marched here in D.C. on the 23rd of January, my hat's off to you. You did get a mention on the Rents Radio Network. I know it's not MSNBC. I know it's not CBS, but, hey, we do what we can do. About the only reporting those folks got on their issue was in the alternative media. Everybody out there know who this fella I got a picture of, for those who are watching this on Justin TV, I've got a picture of Matt Drudge up there. Does everybody out there know who Matt Drudge is? Now, I follow this guy because, he seems to have his finger on the news, and his little one-page links site is probably one of the best news sources I've been able to find. Now, yeah, there a lot of the stuff that Drudge puts out there is, entertainment news, the same type of stuff that you might find on MSNBC or any of the big guys out there. It's kind of, is that really news, Matt? But unlike some of the big national players, Drudge has had something of a reputation over the years for digging a little deeper and actually providing easy access to some pretty hard-hitting articles, some good stuff. Well, I do follow Matt Drudge on Twitter, and he came out, with a tweet over the weekend basically saying, have an exit plan. Okay, well, in general terms, that's pretty good advice, but hey, Matt, an exit plan from what? I mean, that could cover a lot of ground. Now, I'm reading an article here from SHTFplan.com. Hit the fan plan. Okay. Well, you all can use your imaginations to figure out. But, when somebody as influential as a Matt Drudge comes out with a cryptic little tweet like, have an exit plan, woo! That gets a lot of people, Matt Drudge is pretty well connected. He knows a lot about what's going on. I wonder if he's got some kind of inside scoop. Boy, I tell you, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? And, now, look, I'm going to take this guy over at SlavoJanuary.com. A fellow by the name of Mac Slavo. I've used some of this guy's articles before. And sometimes I agree with the man, sometimes I disagree with the man. Pretty much like everything else. Frankly, if you listen to my broadcasts and don't find some items that you agree with and some items that you don't agree with, I'm not doing my job, okay? I got the same thing about this fellow Max Slavo over at SHTFplan.com. He goes off into some speculation that, is fear porn, okay? Now, yeah, look, everybody knows the economy is in a bad way, okay? That ain't news. I'm sorry, that ain't news. And everybody looks at the numbers and they say, okay, the Dow is down, but it's only down this much. It's still up over 15,000. A lot of people say it's overvalued by a third, maybe a half. Gold, for some reason, has been pushed down of late. And for some reason, even with all the pressure and all the printing, the dollar seems to be up. So everybody's kind of scratching their heads saying, what the hell is going on? I mean, I thought we had a market-driven economy. I think right now what we've got is a printing press-driven economy, but for some reason, it seems to be holding together. So, maybe those guys up on Wall Street, Jaime and his friend Irving, maybe they really do have the plan. I don't know. But looking at it, you look at all what they call, fundamentals, and of course, I'm not an economist. I don't pretend to know all the ins and outs over this. But, you look at the fundamentals, you say, something's screwed up here. Something's wacky. And I got to tell you, I think about the only reason the U.S. economy is doing as well as it's doing right now, and believe me, I know, for all those of you out there who have been unemployed for 2 years and have no prospects of getting a job, I know the economy has failed you. I know it has failed you miserably. But gee, if you look at the numbers coming out of government, the economy is just chugging along fine. But the only reason it is because the economies of all the competing nations in the world are doing even worse. So we have a global economic crisis. And, you wonder if the House of Cards should ever start to look like it was really going to collapse. Would Jaime and his brother Irving really throw us into World War III just to cover their markers? Would they really be such slime? Oy vey, no. Maybe. Anyway, Matt Drudge says, have you an exit plan? To be honest with you, I don't know if he means, think of some way to get your assets out of the stock market, something I did many years ago, or if he means, talk to Keshi over in Europe and see if maybe he's got his flying saucer ready so you can get off the planet. Don't know. But that's news. It's being reported around town that Matt Drudge sent out a really cryptic tweet saying, have an exit plan. And there's a lot of people speculating. Some of them probably going a little overboard. It's hell when news reporters become the news. Hey, Matt Drudge, what the hell did you mean have an exit plan? Get real, man. Don't leave us in suspense. All right. Moving right along. Remember a couple years ago, a a Murdoch newspaper in England got in trouble because they were apparently spying on people's cell phones and emails and such. Do you remember that? Well, it's being reported here. This come out of Yahoo.com news. Apparently, some famous actor, a guy by the name of Judd Law, was involved in that, and he was one of the victims of eavesdropping or whatever, and he was called to testify. Anyway, it's in the news, and this is a big deal because this was a news reporting agency who spied on people's cell phones and emails. He told the court he was aware that a relative gave information to the tabloid, which was famed for its celebrity scoops. Law said he had been under intense media scrutiny, and they just seemed to know way too much about his personal life. Whole paragraph here on what kind of a suit and tie he wore. But other than that, I also became aware that I was also turning up at places having arranged to go there secretly, and the media was already there. Gee, that's a dead giveaway. A newspaper in big trouble. People going to jail. People being sued for reading other people's emails and tapping their phones. Where have I heard that before? Now, well, I've got pictured on the screen right now. And you have to excuse me, folks. The reason I keep rubbing my nose, I've come down with a little bit of a cold or something. Poor Mike Rivero, he was so sick today. He had a hell of a time doing his broadcast. I was listening to him. He was really struggling. Hey, Mike, a little bit of honey, a little bit of lemon, and about 4 fingers of Kentucky bourbon probably fix you right up. No, I haven't done the bourbon yet, but right after the show. But I'm sitting here rubbing my nose because, frankly, I'm suffering a little bit. Picture I got up right now, for those of you on Justin TV and who have never seen this fella before, this fella named Edward Snowden. Now, there's some who say this guy is a traitor. He's a spy for Russia. He's a spy for China. He's a spy for somebody. But he's an evil SOB, and frankly, we ought to send a drone his way and shoot a Hellfire missile up his butt for what he did. Okay? There are others who say Edward Snowden is a classic whistleblower. They say the difference is Edward Snowden has no plan for how the information he disclosed is going to make him wealthy and allow him to live the rest of his life quietly on a sunny island somewhere in the South Pacific. Instead, this guy is looking over his shoulder constantly. He did get lucky, and apparently the Russian government is going to extend his stay in Russia indefinitely, so he at least has a place where it's difficult for the U.S. intelligence agencies to operate with a free hand, and not likely they're going to be able to fly a drone in and send a Hellfire missile up his butt. So, for the time being, Edward Snowden is alive, breathing, and he claims that all the documents that he walked away from the NSA with have now been distributed to a variety of select journalists. We know that this guy, Greenwald, who was with Guardian and is now with some questionable news agency, we know that he has a large trove of these documents. We're not sure who else, but it seems that the New York Times has come up with a related scoop from time to time. So I think we can assume that somebody at the New York Times may have some of this material. Bottom line is Snowden's easiest defense right now is say, hey, it's all out there already. I am not holding back any of it. Yeah, I may write my memoirs. I may write a book about this, and hopefully that'll make me a little bit of money because, got to eat. Even in Russia, jug of vodka costs a few bucks. So, you've got to decide yourself whether Snowden is a traitor, whether he was a spy, or whether he is a classic whistleblower. The facts of the matter are that the so-called whistleblower protections that have been implemented in the United States that are so touted as, oh, we're going to take care of our whistleblowers. We want them to come forward. Oh, if they find the government doing anything dirty, we want them to come forward and tell about it, because that is the American way. And I should be hearing bumper music here momentarily and have to beg out for a moment or two while they try and sell a little bit of product to keep the lights burning. We're going to talk a little bit more about Edward Snowden and his dilemma right after we come back from these commercial interruptions. All righty, we are back from those blatantly commercial announcements, which are intended to bring in a few shekels for the studio so they can keep the lights burning there. It does cost a few bucks to do this. Before we left, we were talking about Edward Snowden. And, while I do this broadcast live on Monday evenings, 8 o'clock Eastern Time, I've got access to a live chat room, and there's one fellow out here in the chat room. Don't kid yourself, Gary. Snowden is still on the CIA NSA payroll. And he may be absolutely right. I have heard that argument put on the table by people who I listen to regularly, people who I have a certain amount of respect for. I don't know that to be the truth. The standard argument goes, well, if he had access to all that paperwork, he'd be as dead as Breitbart, or he'd be as dead as who was the other fella, Hastings. Let's face it. I mean, if you get in their way, Jaime and his brother Levin, they know Louis the Legbreaker and Don Guido, and a deal will be made, and you'll go away. Now, whether people like Assange and this fellow Snowden just flat got lucky, or whether they still have a target on their back, and once the media flurry is all over with and things quiet down, retribution is taken, we don't know. Now, as with all things, you're going to have to consider the argument yourself, and you're going to have to make up your own damn mind. But one of the latest revelations that have come out from the Snowden camp is that the NSA was not just involved in spying for the national interest. They were not just involved in spying on you and me and every other average individual. They were also into doing corporate espionage. Now, whether this was a sideline business or whether this is part of their mandate, Snowden doesn't really go into. But frankly, if you are any corporate entity like an Intel or a Siemens or anybody who might have corporate trade secrets, intellectual property that you value, that you sell stock based on, you can pretty much bet that the NSA has been poking around in your goodie bag and probably already has all your goodies and may even have offered them to your competition under the table for whatever compensation or political economic edge. Hard to say. Now, the question you have to ask yourself Is that how Americans do business? Okay. Is that how you want potential business partners out there to view you as an American? If you travel overseas and you got your latest widget and you're trying to work a deal with somebody over there, do you want them to be suspicious of you and your business practices just because you are an American? Well, put yourself in the position of, say, Cisco or Intel or Microsoft, big IT-related American businesses who have apparently been caught cooperating with the NSA in their dragnet of everybody's data. Doesn't bode well for American businesses trying to do business overseas with a U.S. government entity like the NSA out there acting like gangsters. That's why the revelations of Edward Snowden are relevant to you as an American. Now, whether you believe this guy is a CIA plant, whether you believe he's a spy, whether you believe he's a traitor, or whether you believe he is a classic whistleblower who has made dirt known to those who needed to know about it, I don't care. You can make up your own mind about that. What you got to stop and think is, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. Some of the information that has come out from this fella, Snowden, just like some of the information that came out from Assange, even though it's stuff that a lot of people knew already. I mean, I knew years ago, back in the carnivore days, that I was being spied on by the government. For crying out loud, you'd have to be naive. You knew it was going on. But thank you, Mr. Snowden. Because of you, it's now right in our faces. We know the names of the programs. We know how they were doing it, why they were doing it, and the extent to which they were doing it. And we needed to know that information. Now, the question is, do we allow it to continue? After all, it's supposed to be your country. You're supposed to have something to say about it. Well, you can always bark at the moon. Maybe somebody will listen. What do you think the chances are? I hear that Obama is going to put all kinds of controls in. They ain't going to shut it down. Nobody's going to jail. Now, those Rupert Murdoch reporters over in England, they're probably going to go to jail for tapping a few people's phones and reading a few people's emails. How come nobody associated with the NSA and associated with this global spying, this grabbing of not just national security information, but just, business edge kind of information? How come nobody involved in that program is being prosecuted? Gee, it's kind of like the banks and the too bigs to jail. All people are created equal, but some people are just a little more equal than others. A dual justice system. We couldn't put him in jail. He's special. Why? Okay. I'll have to find out from Brett what that's all about, but neither here nor there. Got about a minute before the next break. Let me see if I can get this one out there. Still laughing at this spying nonsense. And so far they've not caught a single terrorist. Okay, they had that thing in operation before 9/11. They were supposedly tracking Osama bin Laden with his satellite phone. Yet they weren't able to do a damn thing about 9/11. Okay, so all this crap for nothing. We've gotten no return on it. Absolutely none. You really think all that spying is going to save you from the boogeyman? Oh, boy. A lot of people are saying that after tomorrow's... shoot. I hear the music. I'm going to have to bug out for some more commercial announcements. You know, they do have bills to pay there at the studio. Please be patient with me. I got a couple more items I want to cover before the night's over. We'll talk to you as soon as we get back from this commercial interruption. All right, we are back from that blatant commercial opportunity, as one of my viewers posted in the chat room. Tomorrow night, El Presidente is going to give his State of the Onion report. Now, you'll have to excuse me. I sometimes get a giggle out of reports that come out of a bunch of satirists called The Onion, you know, and I'm sure they will do a rebuttal to the State of the Union, and I look forward to that a lot more than I do the one that'll be delivered by El Presidente. And I'm sure that El Presidente will tell us that everything is fine, everything is hunky-dunky-dory, and that America is the greatest nation in the world. A lot of people are a little bit worried. This guy is lame duck at this point. I mean, in theory, he can't run again. He can't run again, and you know, he's been, you know, issuing executive orders kind of like the ever-ready bunny. There are people who are worried that he will highlight a few issues that he considers are items of urgency and may just, with absolute caveat and totally ignoring the other branches of government, take it upon himself to move forward with issues that he considers important with the stroke of the emperor's pen. He's done quite a bit of it. This guy has signed more executive orders than all presidents, you know, Clinton, both Bushes, and whatever else. But, you know, and you know, let's face it, his signature legislation, this Obamacare, this national health care plan, is in trouble. Last count, less than 1%. Less than 1% of the U.S. population had signed on. Yeah, I think they're up to about 3 million now. About 3 million have actually signed on to Obamacare. And they are not attracting those young, healthy 20-something types who typically, you know, pay and pay and pay, but never collect. Gee, wonder why. So it's gotten so bad that they've even put a nonprofit together. They're looking for donations. They're trying to get people to donate to help sell Obamacare. You know, I mean, frankly, this Obamacare thing has become a joke. Okay? It's a bust. People are not buying it. They would rather pay the IRS fine than sign up for Obamacare, which is the situation I find myself in. I mean, I will not sign up for that thing. I'll pay the damn fine. So I'll pay Guido his protection money so that I don't get myself busted. But I'll be damned if I'm going to buy overpriced health insurance that isn't really health insurance. So yeah, let's see what happens after the State of the Union address tomorrow. Some say, you know, duck. If you've got a sacred cow, Obama's coming after it, pen in hand. Let's see what happens. And speaking of sacred cows, I always try to come up with a couple of, let's face it, the news is bad. The news is depressing. And, when you get digging right into it, it's easy to get down with all this stuff here. But here's a report that I hope is going to give you a giggle. I hope this is going to give you a little bit of a giggle. This comes out of Berlin. It was reported in Reuters. Methane gas from 90 flatulent cows exploded in a German farm shed on Monday. I guess it's last Monday. Damaging the roof and injuring one of the animals. High levels of the gas built up in the structure in the German town of Rasdorf. Then a static electric charge caused the gas to explode with flash. Okay, now, the cow bomb. Okay, all right. Bottom line is, it's probably been as cold in Germany here recently as it is here. And this farmer, it looks like he brought all of his cows inside thinking he was doing a good thing. And Lord only knows what those cows had been eating, but some small spark ignited their flatulence and blew the roof off the guy's shed. All right, now that you've had your giggle, let's get on to some serious news here. For a long time, they've been scaring us with, this unbeatable boogeyman called global warming or climate change or, whatever they want to call it this week. Bottom line is they want to blame you for the fact that the weather changes. Okay? Well, some scientists have come up with another explanation, and this is worth considering. So there's this thing called the magnetosphere that surrounds the planet Earth that we live on. This dirt ball, this third dirt ball from the sun. And it appears, best I can figure, there's kind of a molten core of ferrous metals in the core of the Earth, and the rotation of those ferrous metals causes this magnetic field to envelop the Earth. Now, it's a damn good thing it does, because without it, we wouldn't have any shielding from bursts of energy that come our way from the sun. Now, without the sun, there would be no photosynthesis, there would be no life on planet Earth. But our proximity to the sun is kind of a double-edged sword. We need energy from the sun to keep us warm and to make our plants grow. But some of the radiation that comes from the sun could be harmful to life as we know it. Well, this magnetosphere creates kind of a bow shock that diverts a large portion of the radiation and particles coming from the sun around the magnetosphere. Some of it, comes down in at the poles and is seen as the northern lights, and I imagine there's probably also a southern lights if you happen to be hanging out down that part of the world. Chances are there's an auroral display similar in the south. Well, it turns out that scientists have been able to measure that the magnetosphere has decreased in its intensity by the State of Confusion address. Yes, I just got a note from my executive producer saying it is the State of Confusion address. Thank you, executive producer. Needless to say, with the magnetosphere down 15% in its intensity, some are supposing that we may be into one of those situations where the poles flip, where the north magnetic pole changes places with the south magnetic pole. Now, the poles have been kind of oscillating. They've been able to measure an oscillation in the poles for some years now. I've been kind of following that, looking at it, saying, that's interesting. Had never seen that before. But yeah, there is a chance that the magnetic poles of the Earth might change places, very similar to what recently happened on the sun. Now, we never actually witnessed the sun changing its magnetic poles like that. We didn't have the kind of sensitive equipment out there that we had this time around. We kind of knew it happened because, we've been able to take indirect measurements and say, oh, wow, the sun just changed. But we actually got to see it in real time this time around, and it was very interesting. We didn't notice any horrible effects here on the Earth, although it did kind of correspond to some earthquake activity and some weird weather and some other things. A lot of people were saying, oh, okay, maybe the swap of the poles on the sun caused that weird weather and caused some earthquakes here. It's possible. I don't think anybody's been able to directly associate it, but it did seem to be an interesting correlation between the timing. Well, nobody really knows exactly what might happen if the magnetic pole of the Earth changes. We know it's happened before, but we've never actually witnessed it happening. So this might be something new and exciting, and it may indeed explain some of the weird weather that we've been seeing recently, or at least some scientists suppose. That's from an article pulled out of the Daily Mail. There will be links to these articles when I post this up to YouTube and when I post it to my website at smartscarecrow.com. I will post the links to these articles, so if you really want to take a look at it in detail, it's an interesting article. Do I know for a fact that the poles are going to flip? No. These guys are they're looking at all the evidence and they're saying, well, we're about due. If you look back at history, they've been able to figure out historically that this has happened in the past. They're saying, well, we're about due, and it's been oscillating, kind of like a top getting ready to fall over for a few years now, and now we're measuring that it's 15% down in the last 100 years or so. So maybe, just maybe. Some say that the worst case scenario is we might see a 6% increase in some forms of cancer, particularly skin cancer. These particles that come in from the sun might punch holes in the ozone layer. They'll be able to pass right through the ozone layer while the magnetic field is readjusting. And when it's all over with, your compass will point south instead of north. That is basically what, don't think that the crust of the Earth is actually going to move. No, you're not going to get thrown out of bed up against the wall some night, but you could, in theory, wake up some morning and find that your compass is now pointing south and that you've got a funny skin lesion that you're really going to want to see the doctor about. But, let's not get carried away with fear porn. It's not the end of the world. It's just another interesting phenomena that you may get to witness within your lifetime. How about that one? Talk briefly about Obamacare. Verdict's in. People don't like it. The Republicans have a proposed replacement. Wish I had time to cover it, but I'm hearing the music in the background. I have run out of time for this Monday. So stay tuned till next Monday, and I'll be back to do some more barking at the moon. Y'all have a good evening. Good night.
Calling out to you, won't you turn around? Oh, I'm calling out to you, won't you won't you turn around?